Namaste. Psychoanalysis and philosophy. Kohut lost into self. Heinz Kohut is amongst the recently forgotten greats in his field. His concept of self with S capital and pathogenesis based on the concept of self is no longer at the center. So today we shall try and revisit Kohut and his concept of self with the help of our psychoanalysis consultant, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste, Mr. Vaidya.
Namaste.
Mr. Vaidya, can we start with who Kohut was?
Heinz Kohut was an American psychoanalyst, and he founded a school of psychoanalysis which is called self psychology. He himself underwent psychoanalysis twice with two different therapists. And despite healing some of his problems, some core issues remained unresolved. Like other greats in psychoanalysis, the history continues with Kohut that what existing concepts of psychoanalysis could not heal, he, in the process of his self healing, created a new school of psychology based upon discoveries of his own inner journey and his own healing. Just as Freud created psychoanalysis, the fundamental principles, based upon healing himself, the whole journey of healing himself in those 5 to 7 years that he calls splendid isolation. And similarly, Jung healed himself in a period which he calls Nakia. And similarly, Kohut also undertook an inner journey to heal some of the issues which could not be healed, and in the process founded the fundamental principles and this whole school of self-psychology. Important point is self-psychology is very different in many ways from classical schools of psychoanalysis. The difference is fundamental. The difference is in terms of understanding the genesis of pathology, understanding the developmental process, understanding the positive aspect of narcissism, the universality of narcissism, and very importantly, a very different way of doing therapy. So the difference is that self-psychology school has from other schools of psychoanalysis is very fundamental. And one person remarked that Kohut saved psychoanalysis from itself. And this is because uh, sorry. This is because Kohut brings a very different empathic, uh, accommodative, soft, patient, and a very positive view of human nature and approach to healing in therapy, which is very different from other schools of psychoanalysis. Self psychology became very popular for some time, and then it had its decline of popularity. However, even today, if you want to divide all schools of psychoanalysis into 4 or 5 parts, one way of dividing psychoanalysis into 5 parts is this. You have a drive school, you have an object relations school, you have a interpersonal school, you have the analytic school, and you have the self psychology school. So even today, if you divide psychoanalysis into 5 categories of schools, self psychology founded by Kohut still continues to be one among the 5 categories that constitutes psychoanalysis. Unfortunately, after a brief rise the self-psychology school saw a decline in popularity, and today few people study Kohout, few people practice Kohout. Many in psychoanalysis uh, have not even heard of Kohout, unfortunately, and more so in India. And therefore, a group of problems that cohesion theory is, or cohesion approach in therapy is very good in addressing, that particular set of patients do not get the right tool to be applied for their healing. Kohout published a very famous paper called Analysis of Mr. Z, which talked about his own analysis, because Kohout was neck deep in psychoanalysis, so much so that his friends used to call him Mr. Psychoanalysis. And in that paper, he talks about his approach, his shift, and how it is different and how it produces results. Very important point is that the departure between Kohout and the classical schools is so high, although both are within the ambit of psychoanalysis, that what Kohout says should be done is almost like something scandalous or blasphemous within the normal framework of psychoanalysis. So the Kohutian psychoanalysis and the classical psychoanalysis almost are worlds apart, although still within the broad ambit of psychoanalysis. However, Kohout has many rich and very valuable things to share with us in terms of concept and in terms of therapy. And I think it's very important that we go into Kohout, study Kohout, and integrate the good parts of Kohout, even if we don't become a Kohutian, into the way we are doing psychoanalysis. And lastly, Kohout, the core ideas of Kohout, like core ideas of Freud and Rogers, have already got assimilated in psychoanalysis, and we don't even know that we are practicing something Kohutian when we are actually doing it. So, in a way, when we look at the framework, the Weltanschauung of psychoanalysis, in that framework, in that worldview, there is a very strong component and space already occupied by Kohout and Kohutian concepts, although people may not acknowledge explicitly or even be able to recognize them as so.
Mr. Vaidya, before we go to our second question, I have a question pertaining to this. That as you said, suddenly Kohout's approach reached a popularity peak and then it declined. Although it is within the ambit of psychoanalysis, there are like big differences between the two. So can you just briefly tell us the reason?
Uh, there is a question towards the end of it where we are going into it as to what went wrong with Kohout, but just to give a summary of that question, uh, there were three primary difficulties. The first was the hazy concept of self, because Kohout developed his entire theorization based on the concept of self. He called the whole thing self psychology, or rather, people call it self psychology, whatever be the part of it. But his school is called the school of self psychology. Kohout used the concept self in terms of etiology and in terms of therapy in both these areas. But he could not very clearly define the concept of self and how it is different from ego, and how in his writings at times we see an overlap between the concepts of ego and the self as though they were used interchangeably, although he denies doing so. So that was the first problem, that the core concept of self, on which is at the center of the whole conceptual edifice, the center itself remains not clearly defined. That is one. The second difficulty was the approach was too slow. And when it is too slow, it is also too costly, both in terms of the cost to the patient, in terms of suffering, and in terms of primarily in terms of money and time. And there was always a movement how to make therapy shorter. That is what is in the interest of the government, society, individual, uh, insurance companies, and so on. So that is one aspect of it. The second aspect of it was the way Kohut wrote it, because he did not write it in the simplest and the easiest of terms. So that is another difficulty of Kohut, the way he writes. And then his followers took it to the extreme, where empathy is a slippery slope to fusion. And they sat on the slippery slope and they slipped. So it became difficult for anyone else to accept that this kind of gratification and fusion that these cohesion therapists were practicing could be for the well-being of patient, or even logically seems to be the right thing to do. And then they could not have anyone who could develop it further. So there was a failure of followers. So these were some of the reasons why uh, the Cohusian school, the self-psychology school, came up very fast, and then the decline happened. And today, if you see in many countries, people would not have even heard of Kohut, which is very,
So
very.
it's right. Very interesting from what you said that some of his ideas are actually in practice or they are being applied by people in psychoanalysis without him being the credit or him being even acknowledged or them be even knowing him, knowing about him. So his concepts are kind of working, but his name is out of the picture, kind of a thing.
Yeah, some of the concepts are
Mm,
working. Uh,
right.
name is out of picture, but some of the concepts that he put forward, which had lot of potential, they remain unnoticed, unidentified, largely unused.
Right. I think something similar in Carl Rogers' case also, I feel, I mean, his certain ideas about empathy and all, which is, I mean, empathy is being talked about a lot these days, but without the names of these two people who possibly really
Right,
brought it up.
right. That is true. That is true.
Okay, thank you, Himanshuji. We go to our next question. What were his central ideas?
Kohut came up with 7 central ideas in terms of his conceptual structure, and some of his ideas were novel in the area of how to do therapy. So let us first look at the conceptual 7 ideas, and then we look at therapy. Kohut says that there is something called the self, and the self develops in the developmental process in early childhood. And this self, if it finds the right conditions, can develop into a healthy self or an unhealthy self. If the self develops into a healthy self, then we have a very healthy mind and we are not in the zone of pathology. We are actually in the zone of living well, productively, and so on. But if the self cannot develop well, then the self that develops is an unhealthy self. And if an unhealthy self develops, then we have to look out for pathology. So for him, when he tries to analyze pathology and the cause of it, the lack of formation of healthy self is the key. Now the question comes, how does a healthy self or an unhealthy self create itself in childhood. So Kohut says there are 7 conditions which, if met, a person's self develops into a healthy self. And if on these 7 parameters something wrong happens, the person's self develops into an unhealthy self. The 7 parameters very important for Kohut are: the first is mirroring. Mirroring means being noticed and being appreciated, admired. The child, according to Kohut, is hardwired for exhibitionism. So the child is hardwired for narcissism and exhibitionism, almost as though to say that in very early part of our life, narcissism and histrionicity are inbuilt in us. And we are looking out for acknowledgement and admiration. Others have to mirror our sense of goodness to us, that we may believe we are omnipotent, narcissistic, and we histrionically exhibit that, but we need a confirmation from the other side that indeed there is goodness in us. And if this does not happen, then we develop a deep sense of inferiority and shame. And that becomes then the core of many other things. Now, this acknowledgement and admiration from others is what Kohut calls mirroring. So the first part in Kohut is mirroring, the first important concept. The second important concept is idealization, that the caregivers have to be good enough for the child to accept them as having some goodness in them, some ideals in them, which the child can then pick up and introject in himself and make those things his own. So apart from admiration and apart from self-belief, the child also has to introject from outside the goodness into him. So he needs objects to idealize and then to take those ideals and introject those, put it into himself, absorb those, learn those. Through what process we don't know, but there's definitely a absorption from outside. So the first is mirroring, then is idealization, then it is empathy. The caregivers have to be empathic enough for a healthy self to develop. Fourth is very good alter ego experiences, or rather, even before that, self object experiences, number 4. And Kohut uses the word self object in a very particular way. He writes self hyphen object. It is not self and object, two different words. And the importance of doing this is that the child narcissistically wants to experience the other as an extension of himself. So he needs an other who will do exactly as he pleases. It's almost like one mind and two bodies. So the other is the other. He is not fused to you. He is recognized as the other, but not as a complete other who would have mind, desire, and autonomy of his own. He is a half other who is an extension of yourself. And this experience Kohut calls self-object experience. Experiencing the other as an extension of oneself. Then Kohut says the alter ego experience, as though somebody is like a complimenting to us, as though somebody else is complimenting to us. Then we have what he calls the twinship experience, the experience of having a sibling or a friend with whom you experience a dyad, a successful dyad. Then we have uh, presence of the caregivers without interference. What this interference Kohut calls impingement. It impinges upon what Winnicott would say going on being. So the child wants the presence of the other, the presence of the caregiver, but not interference of the caregiver. It is an interference free presence. It is an impingement free presence. So impingement is another important element. And the last element inside is what Kohut calls transmuting internalization. That there is a process inside the mind whereby what you get from outside initially, like in idealization or in mirroring, you get something from outside and that satisfies you. But after repeatedly having these experiences, the inside changes fundamentally forever and becomes in a way that it provides to itself without depending on the outside. So initially we get something from outside and then internally we self-generate it. And that change whereby we move from a position of dependence on something to independence from that thing, or from state A of dependence to a state B of independence. That process which makes the inside change for the better and forever is the process of what Kohut calls transmuting internalization. That internalization which transmutes or changes inside forever. So in early life, we need mirroring and idealization. If successfully given, we don't need it lifelong. After that, there is an internal mechanism which makes those things, those outside things, our own. So these are the 7 important concepts of Kohut, and Kohut says, if these 7, there is one more, optimum arc of tension. Arc of tension Kohut defines as the gap between competence and goals. And if this gap becomes too much, the the confidence collapses and there is disintegration. So there is an optimum arc of tension. These 7 concepts Kohut says, if these things are happening well, then in early childhood, then a healthy self develops and a person becomes positive, productive, or outgoing, optimistic, joyful, and so on. If, however, these 7 elements are not happening optimally, then an unhealthy self develops. And the unhealthy self leads to problems, psychological problems. So the question is, what types of unhealthy self can develop? So Kohut defines explicitly 3 and implicitly 4. 4 different types of selves. That if an unhealthy self develops, then what happens? He says the unhealthy self can become a psychotic self if it is very unhealthy. If it is a little less unhealthy, which means the 7 parameters were not completely off track in early childhood, then one may not develop a psychotic self, one develops a borderline self. Still more healthy, one develops a narcissistic self. And still more healthy, which is implicit, Kohut defines these 3 things, but implicitly we can draw a fourth, that one may develop a mildly neurotic self. So these are the 4 states an unhealthy self can take. And in therapy, the whole idea is to help the person make a transition from unhealthy self to a healthy self. And this is done by holding and empathy, not primarily through interpretation, which is the core technique of psychoanalysis, the classical psychoanalysis. So Kohut relies very less on interpretation and more on holding and empathy. Interpretation is used, but much later and much mildly. Now, this is how Kohut defines pathology in terms of self. And the idea there is Kohut does not deny that Oedipus or split happens. Those things are there, but Kohut says if the self is strong, the self is able to provide strength to the defenses, and one is almost able to put a lid on those problems. However, if the self is unhealthy or weakens under stress, self is not able to provide strength or operate defenses very well, the lid develops hole or the lid is blown off completely, and the early childhood problems of Oedipus, of split, all other sorts of issues, they flare up. And Kohut says often the solution is not to resolve the Oedipus or resolve the split, but to make the self healthy, which can handle those things even if they remain unresolved. So of course one can go fundamentally resolve those issues, but those issues are very difficult to resolve. And in some cases, Kohut says not only that it is easier to develop a strong self, but the strong self is the solution, and resolution of the split or resolution of the Oedipus is not a solution. So what Kohut is doing here is that just as Freud has created the psychosexual line of development and somebody else has created another line of development, Kohut has developed, has created a line of development of the self. So he provides one more line of insight of what happens in the first 3 to 5 years. In terms of therapy, in cohesion therapy, Kohut does not go into interpretation very soon. Like if a narcissistic personality disorder person comes to him, he allows him to live out his narcissism to a great extent. Because Kohut says interpretation will make that thing sink deeper and not come out. Because he does not see uh, grandiosity as an error of judgment or an unconscious movement that has to be broken to parts by interpretation. He sees narcissism as an arrest of a developmental process which has to be given right environment of mirroring, idealization, and empathy to restart and complete itself, and in between is the state of grandiosity. Kohut says if you interpret grandiosity too soon, the inferiority and the grandiosity remain in the unconscious, they don't come out. In fact, they are repressed even more. But if you allow the person to live it out, very soon the movement towards realism automatically starts. The movement from grandiosity to realism automatically starts. So Kohut plays lot of importance on, puts lot of importance on not interpreting too early, allowing the person to live out, and also allow the person to have self-object experiences. The person may want the therapist to act as a self-object, as an extension of himself, and this would be blasphemous in classical psychoanalysis if the therapist allows this to happen. But in cohesion therapy, this is all right, and this is a part of the whole healing process. So these are some of the core concepts of Kohout, and his way of doing therapy, which is typically much longer, much softer, much smoother, allowing lot of gratification and quite an amount of psychological acting out, not behavioral acting out, but a psychological acting out, and quite an amount of gratification, which Kohout says is necessary to restart the arrested developmental process.
The central ideas seem very profound and very, very important and interesting. Uh, do you think we have not been able to appreciate them enough?
I think so, because I have seen many of therapists uh, trying to practice. They don't practice for long. Nobody does it for long. But in the initial years, trying to practice very quintessential bookish form of Freudian or Kleinian psychoanalysis, and they end up with very huge losses of patients because it is so hard to take. And there is a very important element here of how the mind responds to an interpretation. In case of the more healthy population, there is a disintegration and the person goes deeper, and then there is integration and the person bounces back. But in many cases, the person doesn't have the resources to bounce back or the resources to withstand the disintegration. And therefore, an interpretation is too much for them. Particularly interpretation after interpretation done for 1 hour and without any uh, softening of that interpretation is very hard to take. And therefore, over a period of time, I have seen most people in the first few sessions, till the therapeutic alliance is built, use Kohout's concept of holding, and they hold back interpretations, they hold the patient, they become more supportive and less interpretative and less critical of the patient. They may not have heard the words or the name of Kohout, but definitely they are using the Kohutian approach. Same is coming now even in something least Kohutian as ISTDP. I mean, if Kohout is one end of the continuum, ISTDP is the other end of the continuum. But even in the other end of the continuum, when dealing with fragile patients, people have realized there is no way out but holding. Unless the patient feels safe, there is no way further progress can be made. And therefore, across the spectrum from a classical Kohutian one end of the continuum to ISTDP the other end of the continuum, the holding, the allowing to build up the self, allowing to build up the capacity, allowing the person to feel safe and held, that is almost universal now. Kohut's concepts of mirroring idealization, his developmental line, his treating of narcissism as a universal developmental process, and if treated well, also an asset to the person. All this, I think, we have underappreciated. At times, we have used it, but we have not given credit to Kohut. But more than not giving credit, I think we have underappreciated. Most people don't even know the Kohutian concepts. Even people in psychoanalysis don't know, leave apart people outside of psychoanalysis. So he is under-read, under-acknowledged, under-appreciated, underused, underdeveloped in terms of further development. And his concept of putting different pathologies on one line of self, how unhealthy the self is, and how unhealthy the self is The unhealthiness is defined by cohesion. How cohesive the self is, how strong the self is. The stronger the self, less is the disintegration, more is the capability of the self to strengthen and use defenses, less is the pathology. So, putting on a continuum, psychosis, borderline, narcissistic pathology, and mild neurotic pathology on the basis of ego cohesion, I think it's a very rich and valuable concept and a very new and valuable way of looking at things. Use of empathy in therapy is another very valuable thing, because slowly and gradually we are realizing that the safety of the patient, the safety the patient feels in therapy is of prime importance, without which free association is really never free. And without real free association and real analysis of that, healing is not fundamental, healing is not swift. So some people have developed cohesion concepts, but in general, they have not been acknowledged and appreciated enough. And I think those in psychoanalysis should have a perspective of Kohut, if not expertise.
What directions have his ideas developed?
His ideas have developed in quite many directions, mostly not acknowledged that these are his ideas. The first is his ideas of holding, of developing therapeutic alliance through holding, through softness, through non-interpretativeness, and allowing a bit of gratification. I think that has become almost universal, at least in the first few sessions. His view of narcissism, narcissistic personality disorder in particular, and by extension, most of the personality disorders, as instances of arrested development, that also is catching up slowly with some people. That's another line where uh, some development is happening. With respect to teenagers and delinquent crimes of children, these concepts have been developed by Icon and Sputnik into very different areas of attunement, of uh, corrective experience, and even joining in. Like some people join the teenagers and become partners in crimes and then start the healing process. It's like the two are in a boat. The teenager thinks he is driving the boat, but in fact, the therapist is driving the boat. But on the surface, it looks as though the therapist is a partner in crime, and it's called joining in. That joining in is an offshoot of cohesion therapy. Many other approaches have also come out. Uh, some have become experiential corrective experiences and have taken the route towards psychodrama. One of the concepts that has not been adequately addressed and taken up is the concept of transmuting internalization. It's very close to Kleinian concept of internalization of a good, reliable, stable object. Not the same, but it's close in terms of the fundamental processes which happen in the mind. Because internalization of a good, reliable, stable object, Kohut would say, is one specific instance of transmuting internalization, which seems to be a more generic process. Now, what that process is something that needs more attention because it's fundamental to the way mind transforms itself using something outside and making it one's own forever. And this process, I think, is a very fundamental process which needs development but has not seen adequate attention and admiration. One more element before I stop. Uh, some of the Kohutian stances are so anxiety provoking for therapists, particularly classically trained, that it almost seems blasphemous. Not only conceptually, but it is extremely anxiety provoking for the therapist, that the therapist is completely unsettled. One of such ideas in therapy is the idea of self-object experience of the patient. That no classically trained therapist would ever even dream of providing such an experience, which Kohut says is central.
How does the presence of the good object appear in his Kohut's theory?
When we say a good, reliable, stable object, or we talk about an all good object, we almost talk about an omnipotent object with all the qualities. So that's a more generic concept of an all good object. When Kohut talks about an all good object, he talks about indirectly, not using the word object, but he uses the word environment and caregivers or parents. And Kohut's self object is that which helps the child in uh, experiencing optimally the seven aspects of the developmental process. So Kohut's good object is one uh, who provides right amount of mirroring, idealization, empathy, self-object experiences, twinship experiences, uh, not high impingement, and facilitating transmuting internalization, and also providing an optimum arc of conflict, arc of tension. So this is how Kohut would look at what an good object is. He does not go into the Freudian concept of a good object, which is providing all the pleasurable sensations, or a Winnicottian concept, which is more of an emotional concept. So every theory says that there has to be a good mother, a good object in the environment. But how should that good object provide its goodness? And what part of what we call goodness is most important? On that point, the theories differ. So Kohut's idea of good parents, or Kleinians would say good objects, has a particular specific flavor to it. It has a specificity to it of the seven things that Kohut says are necessary for development of a healthy self.
Uh, we've talked about Kohut's therapy being very different from other psychoanalytic approaches. So, can you explain it a little bit more? How is it different?
One of my teachers used to ask me, what is the objective of the first session? And he would say, the objective of the first session is to seduce the patient for the second session. And then he would say, what is the objective of the second session? And he would say, it is to seduce the patient for the third session. Point is not that therapy is gratification. That is not the point at all. But the point is the patient has to feel comfortable to return, and return at least enough number of times that a therapeutic alliance is built with the therapist. If you do interpretation too early and it hurts too much, many people won't have the capacity to bear it and will stop therapy. it leads to a situation which is called brilliant interpretation and the therapy ended. So this is what often happens, that the interpretation is brilliant, but it is so deeply hurting that the patient never comes back. In that sense, the cohesion approach is a very graded, very soft, and a very smooth approach. The initial approach is of holding, not interpretation, because there are two kinds of people: people with deficits and people with defects. Right? Kohut calls them the guilty man and the tragic man. The tragic man, where the self itself is not a healthy self, and the guilty man, where the self is largely okay, but there is a different kind of a problem, maybe a drive frustration problem, maybe a split problem, but the self is largely intact. Whereas these are what he calls the guilty man. But the tragic man is where the self itself is not completely formed healthily. So Kohut says, before we go into interpretations, allow the arrested process of the unhealthy self to restart, allow it to become a healthy self, and then start interpretations. So the interpretative classical psychoanalysis is delayed, and a cohesion phase is introduced in the beginning before classical psychoanalysis can start. So there is a preface to classical psychoanalysis. And the preface is a cohesion phase of therapy. And there, what Kohut says is, you have to provide holding and not really interpretation. Interpretation has to be used in a very calibrated and a very sparse manner. Allow the self to develop first, allow the capacity to develop first, the capacity for interpretation. So Kohut calls for holding for a very long time, not interpretation early on. Second, he allows the patient to have self-object experiences for some time, not by commission, but by omission. The therapist allows the patient to experience grandiosity and experience the therapist as a self-object, and points it out to him that he wants a self-object experience, that he wants a twinship experience, that he wants a mirroring and idealization experience. Now, these terms, mirroring, idealization, empathy, twinship, self-object experiences, you will never find in classical psychoanalysis, neither Freudian nor Jungian, nor Kleinian, nor Jungian, nor anything else. These are uniquely Kohutian. And these are the concepts which are leading the Kohutian therapy. And because many people don't even know of these concepts, even if this phenomena happen in their therapy room, they can't even make out that self-object experience is happening, or mirroring or idealization needs are being met, or the person is trying to meet them. Because it said, you can't see what you don't know. So this is what is happening in the therapy room, that because you don't know cohesion concepts, even if the cohesion phenomena happens, you can't know it's there. You can't see it because you don't know. So once you know, you can see those phenomena, address those phenomena, and use them in a much better way. Cohesion therapy also does not look at narcissism in a particular negative way. It also looks at it as something called healthy narcissism. It does not look at exhibitionism in the therapy room as something completely pathological. It is an attempt to restart the mirroring phase of one's early life which has got arrested. So this is where the cohesion therapy is very long and therefore costly, very slow, and it works on very different concepts of the 7 concepts that we said of mirroring, idealization, empathy, and empathy particularly uh, is used as a very powerful tool in cohesion therapy far more than any other therapy. And empathy has many, many meanings. We'll go into it later. But the word empathy has many meanings in the cohesion sense. One of the most important elements in cohesion therapy is the experience of self-object experience, which I think is something which no other classical psychoanalytic therapy will ever admit. The self-object experiences and non-interpretation of grandiosity in the early part of therapy. These two, I think, are very, very major things that set the cohesion therapy very apart from other forms of classical psychoanalysis.
We come back to empathy. What exactly does it mean in the cohesion framework? Can you explain in little more detail?
Empathy is a very powerful concept and tool in cohesion therapy. The first meaning of empathy is holding, that you be empathic to the person and not interpret and cause more pain to the person. That does not mean interpretation should never be used, but in the early part of therapy, you hold more and interpret less. And even when you interpret, you calibrate it in terms of language, tone, and content. Second, empathy is used as an exploratory tool to put yourself in the shoes of the person and see what exactly he is feeling. The third part of empathy is to really be explicitly empathic and use it as a healing tool, almost in the form of a corrective experience, which is a strict no-no in classical psychoanalysis. The fourth element of empathy is attunement. That, like in participation mystique, you empathize with the person, and the attunement is so much that the communication acquires a very different flavor than regular communication. And both people know that they are part of this attuned dyad, almost in the state of participation mystique. And the the fifth part of empathy is to provide safety. That the empathy provides a real safe environment where almost an unconditional acceptance and amoral, non-judgmental environment really gets built up. So there are acts of omission of empathy and acts of commission of empathy. Explicitly and implicitly, empathy is used in various forms in cohesion psychotherapy.
Is this conceptualization of personality disorders relevant today?
Very much so, because if we look at the way Kohut looks at psychosis, personality disorders, and mild neurosis, he puts them on a continuum of healthy to unhealthy self. And as we move towards more and more unhealthy self, cohesion of the self reduces and the propensity to disintegrate increases. So a psychotic self is almost disintegrated most of the time or near to disintegration. A borderline self is slightly more cohesive but easy to disintegrate. Narcissistic self is slightly more cohesive slightly more stable, and more difficult to disintegrate. A mild neurotic self is even more cohesive and consolidated than a narcissistic self and slightly more difficult to disintegrate. And then you have a healthy self, which is a very cohesive self and not easy to disintegrate. So there is a full continuum from a normal self, healthy self, not easy to disintegrate, to a psychotic self, which spontaneously disintegrates. And in between the whole continuum. Now, if we look at uh, Kohut, Kohut looks at two personality disorders on the spectrum, borderline and narcissistic. And the self-cohesion is more in narcissistic personality disorder, less in borderline personality disorder, which is more towards psychosis and less towards normalcy. If we take up all the personality disorders and we classify them into two on the basis of self-cohesion, then those personality disorders which have higher self-cohesion can fall in the narcissistic zone of self-cohesion. Others will fall in the borderline zone of self-cohesion. And this will be a very novel way of looking at personality disorders on the parameter of self-cohesion. And it raises a very important question of how therapy should be done to that set of personality disorders which have low self-cohesion and that set of personality disorders which have high self-cohesion. It's a very interesting situation. And this would also lead us to trying to speculate or research out the causation of these personality disorders as to why certain people have low self-cohesion and certain people have high self-cohesion. What is the manufacturing process of the self? And in that process, how is cohesion enhanced or reduced? So when we apply Kohut theory to personality disorders, we come up with a very interesting situation conceptually, very rich situation conceptually. And in therapy part also, it is very, very rich because most people today are finding that all personality disorders and psychosis should be treated as fragile cases, regardless of how they appear on the surface. Inside, there is a very high fragility for most people. Maybe a group is not, but for most of them, it is true. And this calls for creation of safety. And when it comes to creating safety, I think of all established methods, the cohesion methods is one of the very good, tried and trusted methods for establishing safety.
Can we take a look at Kohut-Kernberg debate?
Yes, it's a very interesting debate. Kohut-Kernberg debate is a very important debate in the history of psychoanalysis. Very like the, I should not say of the same glamorous stature as the debate between Freud and Jung, but definitely a very interesting debate. The Kohut-Kernberg debate goes into two important areas on which we can focus today. Other areas we can leave out. First, how to treat and do therapy for narcissistic personality disorders. And second, uh, which patients can be taken in for psychoanalytic psychotherapy and which cannot be. These are very important two areas where there is a very important debate between Kohut and Kernberg. First is treating narcissistic patients. Kernberg comes from a background of classical Freudian, Kleinian uh, psychotherapy training. And Kohut comes having created a path of his own of self-psychology. So for Kernberg, the way to treat narcissism is by interpretation of grandiosity. That the fantastical nature of grandiosity has to be brought to the notice of the conscious mind of the patient. And if we allow the patient to fly in his grandiosity, we are strengthening the grandiosity and his narcissism. We are not reducing but adding to pathology. And it's a sin of omission that we are committing. So for him, interpretation is the key. Interpretation, the classical psychoanalytic interpretation of grandiosity is a central key to healing narcissism. Kohut thinks completely opposite. Kohut feels that premature interpretation of grandiosity makes the grandiosity go deeper into the unconscious and it makes it even more difficult to heal. So Kohut says we should allow grandiosity to come up and allow the patient to live out what he wanted to live out in the childhood. And then once those things are lived out, a natural movement towards a healthy, realistic self will occur. So for Kohut, it is holding and allowing the patient to live out and not interpretation, which is the way to healing. Second important element of debate between the two is who can be taken in for psychoanalytic psychotherapy and who cannot be. Kernberg divides patients into 3 or 4 categories. Category 1, who should not be taken in psychoanalytic psychotherapy because they are too fragile. No matter how supportive therapy we offer, they still can't take because the very frame of psychoanalysis, of coming, of lying down on the couch, or even the anonymity of the therapist, the coming at the same time, living at the same time, and the psychoanalyst, the therapist speaking very less and offering interpretations, no matter how soft, how less. The very frame of psychoanalysis is threatening and disintegrating for one group of people for whom Kernberg says they should not be taken for psychoanalytic psychotherapy. They can go to some other supportive forms or go to medication, but not psychoanalytic psychotherapy. Second group of people Kernberg says you can provide supportive psychoanalytic psychotherapy, which is more supportive and less involving of interpretations, and when involving of interpretations, very calibrated and soft interpretations. The third group, Kernberg says, are the ones with whom we can really work. Those who are ready for psychoanalytic interpretations and who are the mainstay to benefit from psychoanalytic psychotherapy. Uh, Kohut thinks differently. Kohut feels that anyone can be provided long enough supportive holding phase so that he becomes ready for the interpretative therapy. So Kohut is more open and more liberal in accepting patients than Kernberg is. And the third important debate between the two is on the genesis of narcissism. Kohut has offered his own explanation of how in the developmental process mirroring does not happen, leading to an intense feeling of inferiority and shame, the consequence of which is a reaction formation defense being used to get into a state of grandiosity. Whereas for Kernberg, the explanations that he follows come largely from Freudian Kleinian explanations of narcissism, which may be the rejection by the mother or fusion with all good object. So these are the kind of explanation that Kernberg prefers. He creates his own also, but they largely derive or are set in the framework of the Freudian Kleinian paradigm. Whereas Kohut creates his very different own paradigm of how narcissism develops and how to heal it. So these are some of the very important elements in the Kohut-Kernberg debate, and not many people even know about the debate. Only those who are very deep in psychoanalysis would know there is something called Kohut-Kernberg debate and would know both aspects of it, and therefore be able to handle uh, narcissistic personality disorder in particular and all other personality disorders in general much better than others.
Why do you think his concept of self with S capital run into trouble?
For a variety of reasons. First, he could not define the self clearly. Two, he could not go into the manufacturing process of the self. He could identify the ingredients, the seven elements that we talked about, what leads to the formation of a healthy self. But he could not go into the process part of how these ingredients work out over the developmental cycle. Third element was there was a confusion between self and ego, and the way he wrote was not very clear. At times, it seems as though he is using them almost synonymously. Fourth was what when we say cohesion, self cohesion, how is the self manufactured? And what is the cohesive part or the cohesion providing part of the self? Is the self in constellation around some idea of the self, of oneself, or the I and not I, the I of I and not I? Or are different components coming together, and on the borders of those components is that adhesive of cohesion? So is the self organically developing thing like a seed develops into something, a larger seed? Or is it like a more manufacturing process where components come together to create a self, and these components on their borders have some adhesive which is responsible for self cohesion? Can self cohesion be increased? How does it reduce? When it disintegrates, what happens? So these areas related to the self, because they were not very clear, and he offered etiology of pathology in terms of the self, and the core definition itself was not clear. The construction of the core entity was not clear. The strength of the core entity, which was at the center of the whole circus, that was not clear. It became very esoteric and elusive, almost mysterious. And this is what led to difficulties in understanding of the self. That the self at the center of self psychology itself was not clear, and therefore self psychology had a fate that self psychology got lost into self. And this was and continues to be the difficulty, and there are ways out of it, but the ways are not within the classical paradigm of Western psychoanalysis. We'll take a look at it slightly later.
How do you think his concepts can be brought back into psychotherapy?
I think if we become conscious of it, and if we study what Kohut has achieved and what he has said, we can enrich not only other schools of psychoanalysis, but also develop Kohutian school further. And especially the concept of seeing personality development as an arrested process. It needs more investigation. It might come out to be true, might not come out to be true, but definitely deserves more study. The core concept of transmuting internalization is very important because it is at the center of what we call psychological change. And that has enormous applied implications both within clinical psychology and general psychology. So that needs far more attention. And this idea of universality of narcissism and exhibitionism in early life is also a very important idea which needs further investigation. I personally believe in the universality of narcissism, not the DSM narcissism, but the psychoanalytic uh, version of narcissism, that it's universal along with uh, the pleasure and pain, the libido and the fear, the life energy and death energy. Narcissism also is a universal inborn entity. So these are some of the elements, and I think uh, many areas where we try to go too fast and we realize it cannot go, we have to get into a holding stance for a while. Take for example ISTDP. When they came to fragile cases, they realized the classical method is not working and they have to create safety. Indirectly, they might be using the coercion technique of holding without calling it coercion. What they call creating safety is actually providing holding. And it might well be the case, we don't know, but it might be that a healthy self might be getting created in that long process of providing safety. So you might be actually doing cohesion therapy using ISTDP framework and language. So I think we need to bring those concepts and see whether we are using those concepts inefficiently, and if so, why not go back to that theory and find out how to use it efficiently if we have no choice but to use these concepts.
We come to our last question, which in a way connects to our previous question of why do you think his concept of self ran into trouble? So, can some kind of knowledge of spirituality be used or useful here to explain
Yes,
this concept?
yes, because one way to reconcile Court's difference between self and ego, and then to reconcile the uh, unhealthy ego disintegrating, is to go to Sri Aurobindo's model of the mind, where we have a personality ego and we combine the personality ego with Freud's ego working in the unconscious. So the unconscious ego is busy using defenses in the unconscious, and the personality ego provides strength and provides uh, especially strength to the repression, the defense of repression. So the personality ego, if we visualize the personality ego providing strength to the unconscious part of the ego and providing strength to the defenses, particularly repression, and the personality ego being the source of that strength. And when that disintegrates, the lid is either broken or lifted off completely, and the underlying pathology flares up. So if we combine the concepts of ego of Sri Aurobindo and the Sri Aurobindo's concept of the ego, which is more of a personality ego, with Freud's concept of ego, which is more of a differentiator of the self, I and not I, and the unconscious coordinator. In Sri Aurobindo's concept, also it's a differentiator of I and not I. That's a common part. But if we combine the two, then the personality ego can be the closest to Kohut's self. And that is how it can also get differentiated from the ego in the more classical Freudian Kleinian sense of the term. So if we get into this Eastern paradigms, we can re-articulate a slightly modified version, but a far more clear and cohesive version of what Kohut said, and then apply it with far more clarity and efficacy.
Today we have revisited and kind of tried to revive an almost forgotten great in this field of psychoanalysis, Kohut, under our series Psychoanalysis and Philosophy. And we shall be bringing more such interesting topics. And in the meanwhile, you can write to us at hvindia@gmail.com. Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.